What's up, everyone? Welcome to this episode of Kevin Eats World. In today's episode, we're going to go ahead and make beef stew. It's getting to be cold weather. I have a lot of cow meat, so we're going to go ahead and make a delicious stew. So for beef stew, pretty simple recipe. You need good quality, lean beef that we'll be using. They gave me packets of stew meat, and then I cut up a little bit of a top sirloin. We'll use some onion, garlic, celery. We'll use some beef stock that we made yesterday, but you'll see in another episode. We'll use Guinness and red wine. I like to use a combination of the both. And then, potatoes, carrots, and then a little bit later on, we'll throw in some frozen vegetables just to kind of round it out. But the first thing, in order to get beef stew going, you have to go ahead and prep the beef. So we'll start on that first. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to flour the beef. The biggest and most important part of this recipe is we want to create a really nice roux. So we have some flour in a bowl here. You're going to want to season it with some salt and pepper. And then we have our beef here that we've dried off. We'll go ahead and just season this pretty liberally with salt. And then we'll go ahead and season this with pepper. And then we're essentially going to add our beef into the flour mixture. And then we're going to toss to coat it. And once we're done this, we'll go ahead and start browning it in the pot. All right, so now that we have our beef nice and coated here with flour, I put a little bit of oil in this pan to heat up. We'll put just a little bit more oil and flour is what's going to create that roux. And then we'll go ahead and just start adding our beef pieces in. And you can hear a nice little sizzle there. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get a little bit of browning, but really what the most important thing is that we just start to build a really beautiful roux. So I'm not super concerned about overcrowding here. We'll probably have to do this in 2 batches just based on the amount of beef that we're going to put into this. But this is where you can't skip this step and you can't rush this step. This is where all of the flavor is going to come from. So I would say this is probably about where I'm comfortable crowding wise. We'll let this go. This probably take about 5 to 10 minutes depending on just how nice that roux develops. If it takes 15 minutes, I'm totally fine with that. That roux is going to be the basis of this dish. All right, so I ended up actually just throwing the rest of the beef in, but you can see we're starting to get a little formation on the outside there. We're building a nice little crust on the bottom. This is, again, we're not going to rush this step. We're just going to let this beef slowly build this roux. All right, so the beef is browning and creating that roux. We're just going to do some chopping vegetables. Onion and garlic, there's another video of how to chop, so I won't go through that. For celery, we're going to put this in a little bit earlier. This is not a soup or a stew where like you're worried about the texture of the celery. And we're just going to do just a rough chop. Maybe about an inch and a half pieces. This is not a stock, so you do not want the ends, and you do not want the base. They just don't have great flavor. But this will be enough celery. Really, we're just trying to get flavor out of this, and I'll go ahead and chop the rest of the vegetables. All right, so now that we have a pretty good roux, as you can see on the end of that spatula, just a really nice, thickening agent and flavor agent. We're just going to quickly add the onions and garlic. It was a whole onion and probably like 4 cloves of garlic. We just want this to get a little fragrant. We're not looking to just burn or cook these down. And then we're going to go ahead and deglaze with some alcohol. All right, so you can see that there's this nice crust on the bottom. That's not burnt, that's all flavor. What's going to help lift that is going to be some liquid. So we're going to put, let's call it 1/3 of a bottle of red wine in here. If you're going to cook with it, it should be something that you would drink. The cooking wine is usually pretty gross. We'll throw a large can of Guinness in. Go ahead and start scraping those bits off the bottom. And then we made some beef stock earlier that we can go ahead and throw in there. We'll throw in celery now. You know what I will do is I'm going to add a little bit more red wine. I'm going to add another can of Guinness into this. Just because there's so much beef, we want to make sure that this has an opportunity to reduce down. You can always add water as well if you want to add more liquid so it has an opportunity to cook down, but I want this thing to be super hearty. And then we have some rosemary that we chopped and then some thyme. Again, in a previous video I showed this, but really all you have to do is gently pinch your fingers and you can just pull the thyme leaves off of the stem. And again, just gently pinching your fingers, pull the thyme leaves off the stem. We'll go ahead and add all that. And so at this point, we will let this go probably for about 2.5 to 3 hours on a very light simmer. That'll reduce down, a little bit. And then we'll add, with an hour left to go, we'll add the potatoes. With about 45 minutes left to go, we'll add carrots. And then with about 30 minutes left to go, we'll add the rest of the vegetables. And then we'll have a really nice, thick, hearty stew. All right, so as you can see here, the stew is really coming together nicely. We're probably just a little bit over an hour out. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and add these potatoes. It's about 4 small to medium size Yukon Golds. This will absorb a lot of the liquid, add a nice heartiness. I added carrots a little while ago, just for a little bit of flavor, but I'm going to add a little bit more carrots just for a little bit of texture. And then we'll add the frozen vegetables and let this go for about another hour. And we'll be good. And so stew is probably about 15-20 minutes out. So we're going to go ahead and add the vegetables that were once frozen. Really what I did was I just let them thaw out while the potatoes were cooking. Threw a little water on them, let them rinse. Frozen vegetables are mostly cooked, but we want them to heat all the way through. And then any moisture that's still remaining on the vegetables, I want to make sure cooks out so we still have that hearty texture of the stew. Once it's done cooking, we'll take it off the heat, let it sit for maybe about 15-20 minutes so everything can kind of coagulate together. And then we'll go ahead and have a delicious meal. The stew is looking absolutely beautiful. We're going to go ahead, take it off the heat, let this sit for about 15 or so minutes. This will come together nicely, and we'll go ahead and have Sammy Pie give it a try. One thing that we still have to do, because we haven't done it in a while actually, is we're going to season it. We're going to go ahead and put a decent amount of salt. And I'm filming by myself, so I'll add a nice touch of pepper, and then we'll be ready to go. All right, bubbies, it's dinner time. The stew's been going for a little while. Let's hear your thoughts.
Okay. Well, first of all, it looks really pretty. It looks very thick because of the potatoes and the starch in the potatoes and the flour with the beef. So let's see. It's hot. Super, super flavorful. Let's try the beef. Very tender. Gotta do the donkeys. This is a very good beef stew. I've been begging you forever to make it because we haven't had it in a very long time. This is delicious. Please like Kevy Eats World, like this video, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you next time. Kevy Eats World.